listeners, Sylvia Moir just sent me a little pornography. What are you? Oh my God, my eyes are bleeding. I won't even describe this because I am a lady. Nobody. This is etched in my head. Yes, I can. I was going to start to describe it. A woman engaged in a very lewd act on an anatomy of a body,
We're
and I
talking
can't
about
even.
trapper keepers. We're talking about trapper keepers.
You will
and
go.
I just sent you what I thought is a trapper keeper. Please stop.
The Hollow Bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Hollow Bunny Leadership Podcast. I'm Kristen Ziman, and I am here with my brave and my brilliant co-host, Sylvia Moir. We are former police chiefs who have seen a lot of examples of leadership, both the kind that fills the room with substance and the kind that is all shine and no depth. And the Hollow Bunny is our metaphor for those leaders who look the part but lack the core, the empty suits of the world. And we are here to talk about real leadership, the kind that is built on courage, on competence, and character. So today is a different kind of episode, Sil. We usually talk about like how to lead something, but today we're asking some more, I guess, bigger and more uncomfortable questions. Is how do you build not just a career worth living, but a life worth having?
We are stepping away from tactics. We're stepping away from a number of leadership techniques. And we are talking about really what came to us in What to Make of a Life by Jim Collins, who wrote the great book, Good to Great. Is it a great book if it's good to great? Is that redundant?
It's, you know what? It's iconic.
Okay, it is an iconic book, and this book is about life, and it's about cliffs, fog, fire, and the self-knowledge imperative. And this really, what gave rise to you and I talking about this, Kristen, is not just our thirst for kind of what's out there in the environment and in the leadership and business world and the academic space, but really we're kind of at that place in life where it's about the meaning in life. And we talked before about The Second Mountain by David Brooks. And this is a natural companion to anybody who's maybe a little later in their career, like a lot of our listeners. And so we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about each one. What do you think?
I really appreciate it. And I love that Collins went here. And you know what it really does is, to me, it seems to follow the trajectory of his career. I mean, when he wrote that book, Good to Great, that was one of my go-to leadership books. And I used it as a leadership handbook. And what I appreciate about it is, same with Arthur Brooks, is that the next body of work that they present to the world actually follows their life. And they're, quote, out of the workforce, but they're still thought leaders. So for one, it gives me a lot of hope. At 50, this is my 53rd year, and I think, oh my gosh, my career is over? What's next? And I just think so much about being in this place. I guess what it did for me, I can almost boil this book down to the challenge, and before we start, which is this: if your title disappeared tomorrow, who would you still be? That's, to me, the book in its essence.
Well, and that tracks with Orrin Harari's book and the 21 Leadership Secrets of Colin Powell. And one thing Colin Powell said, and we've talked about it before, distinguish self from role. Because when the role disappears, the self should not. And we talk about agency. I love that it struck that for you. Where it rested with me is that a fulfilling life is not just discovered one time. It's constructed, it's reconstructed repeatedly. And, personally, professionally, I'm at a place in life where I have never, ever, ever been more happier and more fulfilled. Mm-hmm. Really. Yeah. And so this reconstruction is really interesting. And so I think we just dive into it. The cliffs are pretty easy, right?
Yes.
Collins argues, much like David Brooks in The Second Mountain, is the cliff is that defining life event that changes your trajectory. Brooks said it's like this precipitous drop into a darkness. Yes. It's things like you lose your career, you're going to retire, a public failure, a death, a divorce. some of these extraordinary events that life presents us. That is a cliff.
Yeah, right. And here's what I found so interesting, Sylvia. It ties into so much of what we talk about over and over. And here's what it brought up for me is that everybody plans for a great career, but nobody actually plans for a great life. And this is
Huh.
part of the reason why people stay too long. And this is part of the reason why people have a straight up existential crisis when they leave their career, because now it's kind of that question is that if it all disappeared tomorrow, who is left in the room? You are left to really determine the strength of your relationships, because now suddenly you're not working, and
Ooh,
before
yeah.
you were sort of working around each other. And and so I think it's so much deeper. And I love, but let's take the cliff analogy, and the cliff is the hard lesson. And what I found interesting is that in everyone that he interviewed, he couldn't find a single person that has not had some version of the cliff or the crisis, right? Would you say the cliff is the crisis or the big
Yep.
upset in your life? Okay.
Yep.
That is interesting.
Yeah. And so I think that's the most immediate, rapid one to describe, because every one of us can think of a cliff or two that we've gone off of. And then he went into quite masterfully he went into the fog. The fog follows the cliff. And what he argues is that in trying to eliminate the uncertainty in the fog, he suggests learning to navigate through it. And when he talked about that, it harkened back to his work in Good to Great, right? Like, don't panic, don't overreact, take small, deliberate steps. And I think most of us would argue, take a small, deliberate step, stop and assess, breathe, use the practices that got you to this resilient, clear life. And have you been in the fog that you could give us an example on what that was like, or some idea of how we could get through the fog more masterfully?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I kind of already hit on it, and you can tell that that's what always bubbles up for me is being my identity wrapped
Yeah,
up in policing for 30 years of my life, and suddenly that title is gone, that uniform is gone, those stars on my collar are gone, and then asking myself, where am I and what am I going to do next? And I left before I could collect my pension. So I jumped without a net. So the cliff was, I didn't have any, safety harness attached to me. It was just this free fall. So that's where I stood free falling. I shouldn't say I stood. I was genuinely falling. And I also had to remind myself that, the floor has been pulled out before and I've landed on my feet. And so that muscle
right.
memory had to sort of give me that. But okay, but before, so that's my answer. But I have a question for you. Is the cliff the thing that happens first? Because the work that I do right now, the work that I'm working on was what I call moments of reckoning. It's where we're trying to avert the crisis. So let me use an example here. And he used a couple in the book about that NFL player that actually went back to school while he was in the NFL. Like while he was at the height of his career, he thought to himself, I want to avoid that cliff. So I'm going to go to school. And so is the cliff the thing that just happens and then you go into the fog? Or can you essentially put yourself into the fog before you hit the cliff? I don't know. I'm asking.
I don't know. I can't see how you would, because every single one of us eventually encounters a cliff. Sometimes
Okay.
it's an expected cliff. Sometimes it arrives without warning. Sometimes um, we are going along and all of a sudden find ourselves at that
Hmm.
space. I I don't see the cliff as optional, and I don't see how we get to the fog without the
First.
cliff.
Okay.
Give me your
Okay.
argument for why
So
we should consider that.
my argument is that we should spend more time uh, preparing for the cliffs. Even, and this is where
Huh.
it becomes difficult because it's like a failure of imagination. But using the NFL example, is you know that your career isn't going to be in the NFL forever. And so
Yeah.
let's say you get injured. So I'm going to build a net so that if something falls through. So I think I'm looking at it wrong. And I'm looking at preparation because that's the way my mind works, is that,
Well, you always, that's what you
yeah,
do.
yeah, exactly.
You
And so
prepare for the cliff.
I wonder how many cliffs we could avoid. And I know we can't avoid them all because some
Yeah.
of them just show up. And I guess maybe that's where I need to kind of talk myself out of this, is I have it a little backwards, where I just think maybe we can mitigate or even keep from falling off the cliff altogether just with some preparation. And, I'll use an example of like a relationship. A cliff is a divorce, right? It is when something, when it's this impact, it's this, you get to this cliff and there it is. But are there things that we could have done before the cliff to, minimize the impact? I don't know. That's why I'm thinking I'm pushing back, but now I'm talking myself out of it. Is the cliff happens no matter what, the cliff happens.
Okay, the cliff happens, and okay,
Uh-huh.
so let's nudge this, right?
Okay.
I think we know that every decision that a leader makes is going to be scrutinized. We know
Yes.
often we have a couple of choices. The dilemmas are before us all the time as executives. You have a number of rights. We know that. We have a responsibility to prepare for the difficulty. We've argued for that before. So I'm going to agree with you that we can prepare for the difficulty. We cannot prepare for every situation.
Yeah.
We can prepare for the cliff. The cliff is going to come. It's going to look different to everyone given the circumstance in which they find themselves. And they can prepare for the fog. I think that's the greatest preparation. Because here's the deal. It goes along with your work. You know it's going to come. So because you know it's going to come, your responsibility to yourself is then to steady yourself, to prepare yourself for navigating the fog. That's your reckoning.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that's where just to know, it's going to happen. Things are going to come to an end. That you're going to face scrutiny. So, okay, the knowing is part of the adaptation. Now
Okay.
lean into how you're going to prepare for the uncomfortable nature of the fog and that season, that time after the crisis.
So in the reframe, which I'm still not 100% convinced, I got to tell you, but okay, let's go with it. And, the reason that I'm thinking of that is like, I always think of the ultimate crisis, which is death. We are all going to die, right? But the difference is in that those moments, that like health span versus lifespan, there are things that we can do so that, it minimizes the effect. Like, for example, we're, maybe not going to, go out of this world with sirens, but maybe just peaceful because we have taken care of ourselves. But I'm gonna go ahead for the sake of what Jim Collins was trying to do, because I'm not going to argue with the author. And the reframe is that fog is not a failure state; it's the transition state, right? So it's the thing that happens, and I guess nearly universal among Collins subjects. And badly underestimated by anyone who hasn't been in it. It can last months. It can last a decade. So the thing happens and then the fog happens. And still, your work is really largely based in resilience. Do you think the fog is just a different way of saying resilience? Okay, because that's what's hitting.
I think it's resilience coupled with a few things that are really painful for me, very painful for someone like you. And that is that sometimes the bravest thing to do is to wait. It is not everything needs an immediate action and solution. That is hard. And clarity arrives only after this disciplined patience, this waiting, this unfolding. That is really hard. You faced that when you retired from Aurora without the safety net. It's like, okay, now what do I do? And you have so much talent and fire and skill, and we'll get to that in a minute. That was a really painful part for you.
Yeah.
a time where you had to have the discipline to be peaceful, to just see what is going to unfold instead of taking action to make it go forward. And that is one of the greatest pieces of advice we could give folks, is just be disciplined enough to wait, and not everything that happens in the fog needs immediate action.
So that is my nightmare. I don't like sitting in fog. And so this is
Yeah.
the pushback that I would give, because it is, and I'm telling you, I know I'm wrong, but like waiting to me feels like avoidance. Whenever we sit and we wait, I feel like we are avoiding the inevitable. And I guess the tell is whether you're taking the next visible step or you're avoiding taking the next step, because I am an action person. Whenever I am scared, I move. And
Yeah,
that's
me
sometimes
too.
to my detriment. Yeah, to my detriment. So
And
maybe
some
I'm
of
sure
those
Jim Collins is
actions,
smarter.
yeah, well, right? He's definitely got more followers. Well, maybe not more
For
than
sure.
you, but okay. But that's the hard thing, is because the action makes us feel better. And the
Yeah.
action when may result in some irreversible decisions. It's like, oh shit.
Yes.
And I tell people as they're transitioning to retirement, which is kind of foggy, just wait to see what unfolds. It is a time when a lot of super credible, talented people get into this crisis. They're done. And then the fog, they take action and they say yes to a whole bunch of things that bind them to courses of action.
Yes.
That then they're like, oh, boy, if I hadn't said yes to this, so immediately I could have pursued this one, which is far
Yeah.
more meaningful.
Yes. Okay. So that just clicked for me. That is
Yep.
like, that was an unlock for me, because I'm sure, I know you have. I already know the answer. I was going to ask you, have you ever accepted the wrong opportunity
Oh,
simply because it ended the uncertainty? And the answer is absolutely. And I live in this space where
mm-hmm.
I am paranoid of the standing still. And so a great example for me, a little bit of vulnerability, is that, every day I wake up and I think the speaking, the keynote speaking is going to just dissolve. It's going to disappear. So I panic. And then because of that, and it's all a story that I make up in my head, because maybe I haven't gotten, a lead in a week or so, or it was a little bit of a slow, beginning of the year, and I start to panic. And so then I will just start saying yes to everything because I'm worried. And so that is my detriment. And so I would benefit by just sitting still, according to, and sitting in the fog. So makes sense.
Yeah, and that pathway to get there is meditation, right? It's meditation, it's breathing, it's all the stuff that's really freaking hard, because we're people of action. It's hard for people like us to sit around while something is happening in a home or in a place. We are people that we go in, often to our detriment, of the detriment of the mission, because we want to take action to safeguard people. We need to take
Mm-hmm.
action because it reinforces that we are people of character and value and hard work, and perhaps a little bit impatient. So discipline is the key in the fog. Also, the other thing he would argue for, Collins, in the fog, is go toward people, get healthy, stay physically active, listen more than you speak, be disciplined, reinforce your connections and relationships with people. So we have the cliff, we have the fog. Do you want to say anything else about the fog that would help? Besides, it's really hard for people like us and likely hard for a lot of our listeners.
No, I think just the part for me that I have to really digest this and kind of really accept it is that movement is not always progress. Sometimes movement is just noise that you make so you don't have to
Oh,
sit still. And so
mm,
I think that sitting in that fog and making the best decisions for you actually requires precisely what you have just suggested, is that you sit silently and not just pursue the next thing for the sake of pursuance. So I like that. I'm in. I'm in.
okay. And for me, fire resonates because you do this. I just did a talk yesterday to a Parks and Rec department, and it was so uncomfortable because it was outside next to a playground. and people across the entire organization. So line folks, so the guys who cut the trees and do the stuff in the parks, all the way up through the professional staff that does the executive staff to the department head. And that one was really uncomfortable. And I really started thinking as I digested how was it meaningful what I presented, that you have this fire that represents this internal source of energy and purpose and meaningfulness when you do your speaking stuff that is so beautifully unique and so suited to you and your talent. And you maintain the inner fire in such unique ways. And I admire it so, so much. So help us
I,
understand fire.
I appreciate that. And here's what I took from fire is that section that Collins described, it isn't mainly about purpose versus motivation. It's actually an argument that your most creative and most useful years are probably still in front of you. Now, I that takeaway could have been just because of where I am at in my life, but what Collins wants people to do is reframe what 50 means, what 60 means, what 70 means. And
Sure.
we used to believe we associated of the cliff with retirement and that it was the end. And then we just go and play shuffleboard or pickleball or whatever your pastime of choice is. And it's actually not true. And I think what that does for people is unlock what is it that is said is that to have someone to love and something to look forward to are the two, big things that contribute to longevity. And I believe that having something to look forward to, because when you feel like your best years are behind you, that is a
Yeah.
very sad and pathetic state. And so I loved that. And so that was kind of, I know there was way more to the fire, but that was one of my takeaways from it.
Yeah, because motivation comes and goes, right? But
Mm-hmm.
purpose, that core thing remains that steadfast drive. And that is really David Brooks' Second Mountain, right? It's that meaningful, purposeful, the Colin stuff about the fire. It's benevolent, it's altruistic, it's this purpose. And so for many of us, that purpose remains the same, but it might take different forms positionally. It might take different forms in terms of its delivery method. I'm still working in the biz. I just hit 38 years. Holy crap, right? So, but I still feel really driven to contribute to change and influence the culture, the climate, really, and as an advocate and champion for women in the business, because it is still very different for women internally. So the purpose is what remains. It's just the kind of the mechanism in which we carry out our purpose might change. So that's like seeking a different position, perhaps you speaking to different people and influencing differently, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what he's saying here is reaching into new territory and drawing energy from what you're already good at, but also
Hmm.
reaching for things that you've never done before, right? Like when is the last time you were brave enough to suck at something new?
Right?
And we have these fixed selves and identities of this is who I am or who I was in my career. And I think what this argues is that life is about complete reinvention if you choose. It could be a retirement hobby or something that you just haven't had time because your career got in the way. That thing that puts you in flow, think of that thing that you do where you lose all sense of time, and do more of that, but also be open to new
Yeah.
experiences. But we humans are so, oh my gosh, we're so stuck in our comfort that we're afraid, no matter what age we are, to try something new because we're going to be bad at it. Well, yes, of course we're going to be bad at it. So I think he made an argument for that too, is just kind of, doing things, trying new things.
Right. And so much of it is unleashed after one is broken from the ties of the rigors of the day-to-day grind. The
Yeah.
purpose still remains. The title may go, the other things may go, but the purpose still lives. So there's a real call to action to align yourself with what you're really good at and what lights your fire. Dig it.
Yeah. And you know what the other thing is that he talks a lot about high achievers. And I really resonated with this because I think a question that he asked is, what would you do even if nobody clapped? Like
Huh.
whatever is left is the real thing. And you and I are sort of used to being in the spotlight as leaders. We are, at the press conference, we are at the podium. And I would say I'm still standing on those stages. It's different, albeit, but it is still on the stage. And I always have to ask myself is what is left, and that is the real thing. And to sit with that discomfort every once in a while and challenge myself to look for it, because the title was never the thing. The audience and the clapping is not the thing that matters.
It's the people carrying out behaviorally what you're urging them to carry out, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
no doubt. Okay, so this last one is so, so cool, right? It's know thyself. It's self-knowledge. And throughout life, we are really compelled to ask ourselves, okay, what am I naturally good at? And what gives me energy? What season of life am I entering? And the one really compelling question is, the identity I've built still serving me?
Yeah.
Wowza.
Yeah.
And he does such a good job at really doing good research, not just relying on anecdotes. And I really believe that the evolution of knowing thyself and the seasons, it changes us, and we have to have moments of reckoning. We talked about it on this podcast. So I used to identify I am a runner, and I was going to do the world's major marathons, and I was well on track to do that. And after Chicago, I'm training for Tokyo and
Yeah.
marathon. New York Marathon, Chicago Marathon. Okay, everything's going great. And then I was like, something's kind of weird. And then I had the comeuppance, right? And so
Hmm.
I am no longer a runner. We've talked about that struggle. Then I'm in a season where that identity, I had to release that identity. There are
Yeah.
a lot of people that have the same kind of story. I would suggest that might be a cliff. I don't know. But the purpose um, is still, well, I'm not sure it's purpose. I would just say knowing thyself, it's a different season in life. And there's a reckoning that comes with the knowing what I now know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's not
that's
a unique
tough.
story.
No, 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 no. But it's tough for a lot of high achievers because self awareness isn't a personality test. It's like a constant information supply. Like the higher that you go, the more the truth gets edited before it reaches you, right? Not by those who
Huh.
are ill intended, but just by people, protecting themselves. And so you sometimes don't lose self-awareness, but it kind of maybe gets withheld from you in some ways. And I think you had mentioned it earlier, but is the holding up the mirrors. And I think the mirrors are exactly what you said, is like having a mentor, uh, someone that a truth teller, someone that you can turn to who will speak candidly to you, and you do that really well. And so I think that a lot of people are afraid to do that. So I think that's part of that self awareness, is also leaning on other people to help you figure that out.
Sure. And I do think there's a real compelling need to surround yourself with, you call it your front row, your people, your tribe, your front row, your board of directors, whatever you call them, and have folks that have different perspectives of you, that know that your life is going to contain a number of these careers, these identities. It's going to have major transitions. And they're the people that are going to be right beside you to speak truth, to also support you, that these transitions in these major life things are the norm rather than the exception. And they're the people that are going to speak truth to you as you kind of navigate through that.
For sure. And those truth tellers are imperative. And, it's so interesting because Collins doesn't call self knowledge is like a good to have. He calls it imperative. I mean, that phrase is load bearing, right? Is that you can't have anything else without having that self awareness. It's not a nice to have thing. It is an absolute imperative. And I think that is the crux of all things, is being self aware.
Right.
And gosh, that ties into all of the stuff that we have talked about. And even I will even take it one step further, is that even if you do have a team of truth tellers that give you advice, because that we could go to all different people and we can give them advice, but we're giving them advice through our own frame. And Collins calls it, this frame. It's basically how we see the world. And I'll give you a great example just to tie this in a bow. One of my very best friends in the world, I said, I'm going to give you a little bit of tough love and you're probably going to be mad at me. And I said to him, what I would like to see from you, because you are an amazing human being, I would like you to tell people to fuck all the way off sometimes, because he is so kind and he sees the good in people. And I gave him 3 separate examples of how, he continues
juicy.
But here's the problem. Here's the problem. That is my framework. And I will tell you where I go too quickly. I am too quick to tell people to fuck all the way off. And so he could hear that from me and say, hey, I wish you would tell people to F all the way off, because I don't know why I cleaned that up the second time. But, and I said, I want you to be more assertive, because you are an amazing freaking human being. And what, these people have done to you is not okay. Tell them to fuck all the way off. And that's not how he's built. He is a person that sees the good in people. And I am, to a flaw, a person that, so here's why I say that, is that having your team of truth tellers, you also have to know yourself. And he honestly should look at me and say, F off. I'm not like you. I am like this. So we also have to know ourselves so well that sometimes when people are giving us advice from all different directions, and this is maybe where your quiet and stillness comes into play, is that I know what the right thing to do is. And sometimes you just have to just not listen to the rest of the world.
So much of life, it's like all the things we talk about comes right back at us, right? I just yesterday said to someone, look, your passion, your fighting for your people is extraordinary. Here's the deal. Socrates said every thought should pass through 3 gates before it comes out of your mouth. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And I have been saying that so much. I am getting through gate 1, gate 2, and at gate 3, I just am like, and I just shut it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
I wish
anything.
I could undo it. Yeah. I wish I could undo what I said to him, because again, it's just from my framing and not from his,
Well,
and so
you don't
was
have
it
to undo
necessary?
it. It's your truth. You could just say, so I usually say, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody
Yeah.
says something.
Oh, and he
to
did.
me
That's
that-
exactly what he said. He said, I appreciate
okay,
the feedback,
thanks.
which was perfect. But then it got me thinking of like, it wasn't necessary. That's not how he sees the world. And quite frankly, I don't know that I would change a thing about him, because I kind of love that quality in him. But so I'm off on a tangent here, but I do think that there is sometimes too much of trying to get everyone's opinion on what to do next.
Maybe. Yeah. And right. I get that. So, okay. So we have the cliff, the fog, the fire, and the self-awareness piece, right? And so how they connect, what we talked about before this, how they connect, that the cliff changes you, the fog humbles you, the fire sustains you, and the self-knowledge guides you. And I think throughout this, there has to be discipline, readiness, and a real consciousness on how we show up. So, what are you thinking?
I think that All of those things, the cliff changes you, the fog humbles you, the fire sustains you, the self knowledge guides you. I think it's clean and it's a good ratio, but I don't think any of it works without frames. A cliff matters because it moves the frame. Fire is what happens when you find the one that fits, and self knowledge is how you know which one you're in. Actually,
Right?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Well, I have to say that I appreciate that um, that we brought this, and we brought it out of really answering questions from people. And so I think we have listeners that have a real compelling kind of frame in which to do some evaluation, right? And to ask themselves some compelling questions. Would you argue that asking yourself some compelling questions? I'm not a journaler, you're a super journaler. I am in little periods of time, but you're really, really good at it. I envy your writing. I envy your discipline to sit down and just write and to work through things with the written word. Um, I really do. Do you argue that folks should sit and evaluate by asking themselves some key questions? Or would that
Yeah,
even be a
yes, and in the way that is most beneficial to them. For you, Sil, when you sit in silence, that's when you know the answer. It bubbles up somewhere, somehow.
right?
There is a knowing inside of us. And I'm not as good at doing that. And this probably goes back to, I feel like if I sit still too long, then I'm not acting. And then I start to shame myself for not moving. And I'm like, stop, you're wallowing, when that's not it at all. But that's why my process is different. I sit
Yeah.
down and I write, because the only way that I confront how I feel about something is genuinely through writing it. And then I'm able to challenge myself, which is, it's just very, it's just my process. But I think
Yeah.
everyone, and this kind of comes to the point where other people like to go to other people and say, hey, what would you do in this scenario? Get advice from your trusted advisors. I guess the point here is there is no one right answer on our journey of self-discovery. But I think that no matter how we do it, we simply must do it.
Sure. And you're such a great example, Kristen, for when the title disappeared, it went away, you gave it up, you left honorably. Your influence remained, your character remains, your legacy remains, your values remain, and you still had the purpose to then drive forward in a way that contributed so meaningfully with a different kind of portal, a different portal into you, but also in how people view you, but also a different mechanism in which to influence for greatness. So I think you're a shining example in how to do this. And you and I have different approaches, which makes this so cool. But no matter what, when you strip away the fact that I get still and go to a place of stillness, um, and also action, because I pull out drawers and reorganize. Let's just admit it. You and I have different approaches, but when you strip that all away, we're both a really fucking good time.
Oh my God. I mean, such a good time. It's crazy. I mean,
Such.
you send me pornography texts and, um, I mean, there's never a
Yeah,
dull moment with you in my life, Sylvia Moir.
right. And never a dull moment with you, Kristen Ziman. You make me better. So, hey, if our conversation challenged people, then we encourage you to spend some time reflecting not on what you're leading, but perhaps on who you're becoming, perhaps uh, double down or an investment into resilience so you are disciplined and focused in the fog in a way that brings some clarity, because it's, I mean, this is worthy of our greatest kind of conversations. And we hope that people feel nudged into doing some stuff on their own behalf.
Yeah, I love that. And just to bring it home, because I think that I need to come full circle on this, is that I started by asking who you'd be if your title disappeared
Yep.
tomorrow. And perhaps we end somewhere, or we have ended somewhere slightly different, is that titles expire, so do you. And so the question is what you spend the middle on. So don't go reflect on necessarily what you're leading, go reflect on who you are becoming, because the organizations we build matter for sure, but the life that we build beyond those organizations matter even more.
Yep. Love it.
Hey friends, if you love what you're doing, show us some love. Subscribe to the Hollow Bunny Leadership Podcast. You can like it, review it, and spread the word. Follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube. This podcast is produced by the incomparable Ted Madden, and the music you're about to hear was written and performed exclusively for our podcast by my handsome and talented son, Jake Ziman, along with his equally accomplished friends, Fabian and Zoe. And if you don't like the podcast, move along. Just jump off that cliff. Okay, bye.
Bye.
When you look inside, what do you find? Are you content to fall behind? When you lose your way and you've lost your why, have courage and get ready to fight the hollow bunny. When the way ahead is covered in smoke and you're tired and scared and you're losing hope, you'll open your heart and your eyes to see a challenge and a question. Why not me? To fight the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. When the challenge ahead scares you to death, you tame the imposter inside instead. To change the world, you've got to start small. It takes a leader to say, I don't know it all. And I know I'm gonna fall, but I'll pick it up and come back stronger. Failing forward and moving onward, doing the hard thing and the right thing, forever fighting the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. If you're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. You're tough on the outside but empty